The grand hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with barely contained laughter. Thousands of alien representatives filled the circular chamber, their bodies glowing, floating, or simply sitting in their designated areas. The massive crystal dome above showed the swirling colors of deep space, making the hall feel like the center of the universe itself. Admiral James stood straight and tall at the speaker's platform, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the mockery around him. Beside him, Dr. Anna kept her hands folded behind her back, her gray eyes fixed on the High Council members floating on their elevated platforms. "You expect us to believe," spoke Head Counselor Red, his crystalline body shimmering with amusement, "that your species, barely 1,000 years into space travel, has mastered seventh-dimensional engineering." His voice echoed through the chamber, triggering another wave of laughter. "We don't expect you to believe anything," Admiral James replied calmly. "We are here merely to inform the Council of our achievement, as required by Galactic Law 447. A snake-like being with glowing scales slithered forward in its hoverpod. "My species mastered fifth-dimensional travel 3,000 years ago. We still cannot touch the seventh dimension. What makes you hairless apes think you've done the impossible?" Dr. Anna stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "The fact that you call it impossible might explain why you haven't achieved it yet." The chamber erupted in hisses and growls. Head Counselor Red raised his crystalline arms for silence. "Watch your tone, human. You stand before species that were exploring the stars when your kind still thought the Earth was flat. And yet here we stand," James said, pulling out a small holographic projector. With a click, it displayed the image of Earth's new ship, the Hyperion. The vessel looked deceptively simple, a sleek, silver craft with subtle blue lines running along its hull. This, a cloud-like being pulsed with colors that translated to laughter in the chamber's universal translator. "This primitive vessel contains a seventh-dimensional drive. It doesn't even have basic fifth-dimensional stabilizers." Dr. Anna smiled slightly. "We find it interesting that advanced species always expect advanced technology to look complicated. Sometimes, the most profound breakthroughs appear simple on the surface." The head counselor leaned forward, his crystalline structure catching the light from distant stars. "Humans, your species is young. We appreciate your enthusiasm. But claiming to have mastered seventh-dimensional physics is not just bold. It's dangerous. Such claims could destabilize diplomatic relations." "We make no claims," Admiral James said, switching off the hologram. "We are merely informing the Council that in 3 standard days, the Hyperion will conduct its first official test flight using our seventh-dimensional drive. As per Galactic Law 447, all major technological breakthroughs must be reported to the Council before testing." A beam made of pure light floated down from the upper levels. "And what exactly does your seventh-dimensional drive do, humans?" "That," Dr. Anna replied with a small smile, "will be demonstrated during the test flight. We've already transmitted the coordinates in time to the Council's secretary." More laughter filled the chamber, but this time it carried an edge of uncertainty. The humans' confidence was unsettling. They weren't acting like a species trying to bluff its way to importance. They were acting like a species that knew something others didn't. "Very well," Head Counselor Red declared. "The Council acknowledges your notification. But be warned, if this is some kind of deception, the consequences will be severe." As Admiral James and Dr. Anna left the chamber, the laughter and mockery followed them. But neither looked back, and neither showed any sign of being affected by it. "That went exactly as expected," Dr. Anna whispered as they walked down the crystalline corridor. Admiral James nodded slightly. "They always laugh at what they don't understand. In 3 days, they'll learn why that's a mistake." Behind them, the council chamber continued to buzz with amused discussions about the foolish humans and their impossible claims. None of them noticed that the humans' calm confidence hadn't wavered even once. In just 3 days, the laughter would stop. The Hyperion floated silently in Earth's orbital dock, its silver hull reflecting the blue glow of Earth below. From the outside, It looked almost too simple. No massive engines, no complex external systems, just smooth lines and subtle patterns that seemed to shift when no one was looking directly at them. Chief Engineer Marcus stood at the ship's control center, his fingers dancing over the holographic displays. At 52, his gray hair and lined face showed years of experience, but his eyes sparkled with the excitement of a child watching a new toy come to life. Core stability at 100%, he announced, more to himself than to Dr. Lisa, who worked at a station nearby. The young quantum physicist barely looked up from her calculations, her dark hair tied back in a practical bun. "The Council's observers will be here in an hour," she said, finally looking up. "They're probably expecting something more impressive looking." Marcus chuckled, walking over to the center of the control room, where a simple glass cube, no bigger than a coffee table, hummed with a soft blue light. This was the heart of the Hyperion, the seventh-dimensional core that the entire galaxy thought impossible. "That's the beauty of it," he said, placing his hand on the cube's surface. "Everyone thinks breaking into higher dimensions requires massive machines and complex systems. They never stop to think that maybe they were just making it too complicated." The cube pulsed gently under his touch. To most observers, it would look like nothing more than a decorative light. They couldn't see what Marcus and Lisa saw, the subtle ways it bent reality around it, the almost invisible threads it wove through dimensions that most species didn't even know existed. "Engineering report, Chief." Captain Roberts' voice came through the ship's comm system. Unlike the grandness of alien ships' commanders, the captain's voice was casual, almost friendly. "All systems normal, sir," Marcus replied. "The core is stable and ready for the observation team. Though I still think we should show them what it can really do." "Orders are orders," Robert responded. "We just show them basic functionality today. The real demonstration comes in 3 days." Lisa walked over to join Marcus at the core, her tablet displaying complex equations that would give most mathematicians headaches. "It's funny," she said, "all those advanced species out there, and none of them ever thought to look at the seventh dimension this way." "That's because they all followed each other's lead," Marcus said, making a final adjustment to the core's settings. 4 dimensions, then 5, then 6, always thinking in terms of movement and space. None of them ever thought that the seventh dimension might be something completely different. The ship's internal lights dimmed slightly as the core pulsed again. Through the control room's windows, Marcus could see the docking bay's reality blurred just a tiny bit, a sign that the core was working perfectly. "Observation team approaching," the ship's AI announced. Its voice was simple and clear, unlike the overly dramatic AIs that alien ships preferred. "Right on time," Lisa said, straightening her uniform, "ready to disappoint them with our primitive technology." Before Marcus could answer, the docking bay's doors opened. 3 alien observers floated in, one a being of pure energy, another a tall insectoid creature, and the third a hovering mass of intelligent gas. Their expressions, on those who had faces, showed clear disdain. "This is your seventh-dimensional drive," the energy being asked, its voice dripping with contempt as it looked at the simple cube. "Where are the dimensional stabilizers? The reality anchors? The quantum field generators?" Marcus smiled politely. "We find we don't need them. Would you like to observe our basic system test?" The aliens positioned themselves around the room, their scanning devices ready to prove that this was all a human hoax. Marcus caught Lisa's eye and gave her a slight nod. She pressed a sequence into her console. The cube's glow intensified slightly. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien observers' scanning devices all sparked and shut down simultaneously. What just happened?" the insectoid alien demanded. "Oh," Lisa said innocently, "your devices operate on fifth-dimensional principles. They're not really equipped to measure what we're doing here. Would you like to see what the core can do with just 2% power?" The aliens looked at each other nervously. For the first time, Their content was replaced by something else. Uncertainty. Marcus turned back to his console, hiding his smile. In 3 days, uncertainty would be replaced by something much stronger. Fear. Emergency alarms blared through the Galactic Council chamber, their urgent tones cutting through the usual diplomatic chatter. The massive view screen at the center of the hall displayed a terrifying sight. 5 star systems, their space warped and twisted by artificial anomalies that pulsed with sickly green light. "The Void Empire's weapons are unlike anything we've seen before," announced General Stone of Earth's Defense Force. He stood calmly at the center of the chaos, pointing to the expanding distortions. "They're using fifth-dimensional technology to tear holes in space itself." Head Counselor Red's crystalline form flickered with distress patterns. "Impossible. The Empire is a minor power. They couldn't have developed such weapons without us knowing." Apparently, Dr. Anna said from her position beside General Stone, "You're not as good at detecting technological advances as you think." The chamber erupted in angry shouts, but they were silenced by new data streaming across the view screen. Another star system vanished into the growing anomalies, its billion inhabitants lost in an instant. "Our best ships are already on site," a cloud-like being reported, its colors shifting to emergency patterns. "The Stellar Guard has deployed their entire fifth-dimensional fleet." The view screen shifted to show hundreds of advanced alien ships, their massive forms bristling with technology, engaging the anomalies. Energy beams, quantum torpedoes, and dimensional disruptors fired into the green distortions. Nothing worked. "The anomalies are still expanding," reported a technician, her voice trembling. "At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds in less than 6 hours." Admiral James stepped forward, his weathered face serious. "The Hyperion is ready for its demonstration. Perhaps now would be a good time." The chamber fell silent. Head Counselor Red's crystalline structure vibrated with barely contained anger. "You expect us to believe your seventh-dimensional ship could succeed where our most advanced fleets have failed?" "No," James replied calmly. "We don't expect you to believe anything. We're offering to help. Whether you believe we can or not doesn't change the fact that in 5 hours and 43 minutes, those anomalies will reach the Centauri colonies. How many billions will die while you cling to your pride?" The massive view screen flickered again, showing new data. 2 more star systems had fallen to the expanding threat. The Void Empire's message was clear. They had found a way to turn the Council's own dimensional technology against them. "Even if we wanted to accept your help," a snake-like counselor hissed, "your ship would take days to reach the affected sectors." Dr. Anna smiled slightly. "You're thinking in terms of normal space travel. The Hyperion is already there." The view screen changed again, showing a new signal. The sleek silver form of the Hyperion hung in space near the largest anomaly, looking impossibly small against the massive distortion. "How?" Head Counselor Red started, but stopped as new readings filled the chamber sensors. "This is Captain Robert of the Hyperion," a calm voice announced over the Council's comm system. "We're in position and ready to demonstrate our seventh-dimensional drive's capabilities. With the Council's permission, of course." The chamber erupted in confused discussion. Some demanded the humans be arrested for unauthorized deployment. Others called for immediate action, regardless of protocol. A few simply stared at their sensor readings, trying to understand how the Hyperion had crossed thousands of light years in seconds. Head Counselor Red raised his arms for silence. His crystalline form had stopped flickering, now showing the deep patterns of a being faced with an impossible choice. "The Council," he paused, his pride warring with necessity. "The Council grants permission for the human vessel Hyperion to attempt containment of the anomalies." "Thank you, Counselor," Captain Roberts' voice replied. "Dr. Lisa, you may power up the core." The chamber's sensors suddenly exploded with readings that none of their scientists could interpret. The Hyperion's simple silver form began to glow with a light that seemed to come from somewhere else, somewhere beyond normal space. The laughter that had filled these chambers days ago was gone now, replaced by something else. Hope mixed with fear. As they watched the small human ship face down, a reality-breaking threat, many in the chamber had the same thought. Perhaps they should have paid more attention when the humans tried to explain what their seventh-dimensional drive could really do. The Hyperion hung in space, dwarfed by the massive green anomaly that twisted reality around it. Through the ship's main viewport, Chief Engineer Marcus watched the failed attempts of the alien fleets. Their advanced weapons splashed harmlessly against the dimensional tiers, like rain against a window. "All alien ships are pulling back to safe distance," reported Captain Robert from his command chair. "They're finally giving us room to work." Dr. Lisa's fingers flew across her console, making final adjustments to the seventh-dimensional core. The simple glass cube at the center of the ship pulsed with a steady blue light, seemingly undisturbed by the chaos around it. "Incoming transmission from the Council," the ship's AI announced. Head Counselor Red's crystalline face appeared on the main screen, his structure showing stress patterns. "Human vessel, our sensors indicate your power output is minimal. How do you expect to contain these anomalies when our most powerful ships have failed?" "With respect, Counselor," Dr. Lisa replied without looking up from her calculations, "your ships are trying to fight fifth-dimensional problems with fifth-dimensional solutions. It's like trying to drain an ocean by shooting at it." Marcus walked to the core, placing his hand on its smooth surface. "Think of it this way," he added. "Your ships are trying to push against these anomalies. We're going to simply change the rules they operate under." The council chamber fell silent. On the screen, various alien representatives exchanged confused looks. Their sensors showed the Hyperion was generating barely enough power to run a small city, let alone challenge a reality-breaking weapon. "You have exactly one attempt," the head counselor declared. "If you fail, the anomalies will consume your ship instantly." Captain Robert smiled slightly. "Then we better not fail." "Dr. Lisa, are you ready?" "Final calculations complete," she confirmed. "The core is aligning with the seventh-dimensional frequency. Marcus, I need that stability modification now." Marcus turned to his console, entering a series of commands. The core's blue glow deepened, and for a moment, reality seemed to blur around the edges of everyone's vision. "What are you doing?" demanded a snake-like counselor through the comm. "Our sensors can't even read what's happening on your ship anymore." "That's because your sensors are looking for the wrong things," Dr. Lisa explained, her voice calm despite the tension. "You're trying to measure power output, energy signatures, dimensional distortions. But that's not what the seventh dimension is about." Through the viewport, the green anomalies pulsed menacingly. Another star system flickered on the edge of their effect, its billions of inhabitants moments away from destruction. "Core is ready," Marcus announced. "Waiting for your command, Captain." Captain Roberts stood from his chair, looking at the massive threat before them. "Dr. Lisa, please explain to our audience what they're about to see. They deserve to understand." Lisa finally looked up from her console, addressing the council directly. "Your civilizations mastered the art of moving through dimensions. That's impressive, but limited. You never realized that the seventh dimension isn't about movement at all. It's about the rules themselves." "What rules?" Head Counselor Red demanded. "The rules of reality," Marcus answered simply. "Captain, we need to act now. That system won't last another minute." Captain Robert nodded. "Dr. Lisa, activate the core. Full demonstration power." The simple glass cube in the center of the ship began to glow brighter, but not in any way the alien observers understood. It wasn't getting more powerful. It was becoming more real, as if everything else around it was just a sketch, while it was the only solid thing in existence. "Impossible," someone in the council chamber whispered. "You keep using that word," Dr. Lisa said, entering the final command. "I don't think it means what you think it means." The core pulsed once, and for a brief moment, everyone watching saw something their minds couldn't quite process, as if reality itself had hiccuped. The Hyperion didn't fire any weapons. It didn't launch any countermeasures. It simply rewrote the rules. and the alien counselors watched in stunned silence as their impossible problem encountered humanity's impossible solution. The Hyperion's control room hummed with energy as Dr. Lisa stood before the holographic display. Behind her, the seventh-dimensional core pulsed with its characteristic blue light, casting strange shadows that seemed to move in ways shadows shouldn't. "Look at this," she said, gesturing to the display where a complex diagram appeared. The ship's crew gathered around, while the council members watched through their video feed. Every advanced species in the galaxy made the same mistake. They all thought dimensions were like layers of a cake. Marcus nodded, understanding dawning on his face. They kept trying to go higher, thinking each dimension was just another direction to travel in. "Exactly," Lisa continued, expanding the hologram. It showed the familiar dimensions: height, width, depth, time, and the higher dimensions that alien species had mastered. They conquered the fifth dimension, learning to step sideways through probability. They mastered the sixth, gaining control over different possible timelines. Captain Robert leaned forward in his chair, but they never understood the seventh because they were looking for another layer. The hologram shifted, showing something that made the alien observer's sensors go haywire. It wasn't just a diagram anymore. It was a representation of reality itself, with all its rules and patterns laid bare. "The seventh dimension isn't a place you can go," Lisa explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "It's not a direction you can travel. It's the dimension of rules itself, the dimension where the laws of reality are written." Through the comm system, Head Counselor Red's crystalline voice crackled. "Impossible. The laws of physics are absolute. They cannot be changed." Marcus walked to the core, placing his hand on its surface. "That's like saying the rules of a game can't be changed. But who makes the rules in the first place?" The hologram shifted again, showing the green anomalies that threatened nearby systems. "Look at what the Void Empire did," Lisa pointed out. "They used fifth-dimensional technology to tear holes in space. They're breaking the rules, but they're still playing within the larger framework." "But we," Captain Robert added with a slight smile, "we learned to access the framework itself." The alien observers watched in confusion as Lisa brought up new diagrams. These weren't just mathematical formulas. They were equations that described the very nature of existence. "Humanity's greatest strength," she continued, "has always been our ability to think differently. While every other species tried to master movement through dimensions, we asked a different question. What if we could talk to the dimension where reality's rules are written?" The core pulsed again, and for a moment, everyone in the room felt a strange sensation, as if they were characters in a story suddenly becoming aware of the page they were written on. "The seventh dimension is consciousness itself," Lisa explained. "It's where the universe becomes aware of its own rules. And once you become aware of rules, you can change them," Marcus finished. Through the viewport, the green anomalies continued their deadly expansion. But now the Hyperion's crew looked at them differently. They weren't an unstoppable force of destruction. They were just a set of rules that needed to be rewritten. "This is why our ship looks so simple," Lisa said, gesturing around the control room. "We don't need massive engines or complex systems. We just need a way to access the seventh dimension, a way to speak to reality itself." The alien counselors remained silent, their sensors and instruments trying desperately to understand what they were seeing. Their most advanced scientific theories were being rewritten before their eyes. "So when we activate the core," Captain Roberts said, standing up, "we're not fighting against the anomalies. We're not trying to contain them or destroy them." "No," Lisa agreed, her hand hovering over the core's control panel. "We're simply going to change the rules they operate under, like editing a line of code in the universe's programming." The core's blue light intensified, and reality seemed to hold its breath. The moment had come to prove that humanity's understanding of the seventh dimension wasn't just theory. It was the key to saving billions of lives. And perhaps more importantly, it was about to show the galaxy that sometimes the simplest solutions come from thinking in ways no one else had dared to try. The Hyperion faced the massive green anomalies, its silver hull reflecting the twisted light they emitted. Inside the control room, every crew member stood at their station, ready for the moment they had trained years for. Core power at maximum stability, Marcus reported, his hand steady on the controls. Reality interface is active. Dr. Lisa nodded, her eyes fixed on the swirling calculations flowing across her screen. Captain, we have a clear connection to the 7th dimension. We can begin. Captain Robert stood from his command chair, his voice calm but firm. Send the final warning to all ships in the area. They need to be at least 2 light minutes away from the effect zone. Through the main viewport, they watched as the massive alien fleet retreated. Their huge ships, bristling with 5th-dimensional technology, looked like toys compared to the reality-breaking anomalies they had failed to stop. All ships report safe distance, the ship's AI announced. Council observation feeds are stable. The main screen lit up with Head Counselor Red's face. His crystalline structure showed signs of stress. Human vessel, this is your final warning. If you fail, there will be no escape. The anomalies will consume you instantly. Thank you for your concern, Counselor, Captain Robert replied. Dr. Lisa, show them what we can do. Lisa's fingers danced across her console. The core's blue glow deepened, and suddenly everyone in the room felt a strange shift, as if gravity had forgotten which way was down for a moment. Beginning 7th-dimensional interface, she announced. Marcus, I need that reality anchor now. Marcus turned a simple dial on his console. The core pulsed once, and through the viewport, space itself seemed to ripple. Anchor established. We're now operating outside normal space-time rules. The alien observers watched in confusion as their sensors stopped working entirely. The Hyperion hadn't vanished. It had simply stepped into a layer of reality their instruments couldn't understand. Starting the rewrite, Lisa said quietly. Her hands moved in complex patterns over her controls, targeting the basic rules the anomalies operate under. The core's light changed, becoming something that eyes couldn't quite process. It wasn't just glowing. It was reaching into the fabric of reality itself. What are you doing? Demanded a council member through the comm. The anomalies are changing. They were more than changing. As the crew watched, the massive green tears in space began to shift. It wasn't a violent process. There was no explosion, no massive release of energy. The anomalies simply began to forget how to exist. Initiating primary rewrite, Lisa announced. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked. Marcus, keep the anchor steady. The core pulsed again, and reality rippled like a pond surface. The green anomalies started to fade, not because they were being destroyed, but because the rules that allowed them to exist were being rewritten. Impossible, shouted someone from the council chamber. They're actually doing it. Captain Robert smiled slightly. Dr. Lisa, complete the sequence. Lisa pressed one final control. The core flared with brilliant blue light, and for a split second, everyone watching saw something their minds couldn't quite grasp. A glimpse of the 7th dimension itself, where the rules of reality were written. When their vision cleared, the anomalies were gone. Not destroyed, not contained, but simply unmade. The space they had occupied was pristine, as if they had never existed at all. Rewrite complete, Lisa announced, her voice tired but proud. The dimensional rules in this sector have been updated. Those types of anomalies can't exist here anymore. Through the viewport, the alien fleet hung motionless in space. Their sensors were working again, but they almost wished they weren't. The readings they showed were clear. The humans hadn't just stopped the threat. They had changed the very laws of physics to make such threats impossible. Status report, Captain Robert called out. Core is stable, Marcus reported. Reality anchor is holding. All systems normal. Dr. Lisa. She looked up from her console, a small smile on her face. The new rules are holding, Captain. And according to my calculations, they're permanent. The comm system was silent. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council had nothing to say. The demonstration was complete, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. The massive room, usually filled with the sounds of 1,000 species talking at once, was silent as a tomb. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ was fixed on the holographic display showing the Hyperion's return. The small silver ship glided into the Council's main docking bay, looking exactly as it had before. No battle scars, no signs of the incredible power it had wielded. Just smooth silver hull, and those subtle blue lines that seemed to shift when no one looked directly at them. Head Counselor Red's crystalline form had lost its usual bright glow. "The preliminary reports have been verified," he announced, his voice echoing in the silent chamber. "The anomalies aren't just gone. The laws of physics in that sector have been permanently altered. Such weapons can never be created there again." Admiral James stood at the speaker's platform, the same spot where days ago he had endured their mockery. "As we said before," he spoke calmly, "humanity's approach to the seventh dimension is different from what you expected." The chamber's main doors opened, and the Hyperion's crew entered. Captain Robert led the way, followed by Dr. Lisa and Marcus. They walked with quiet confidence, their simple uniforms a stark contrast to the elaborate dress of the council members. "You must understand," a cloud-like being pulsed urgently, "this changes everything. The ability to rewrite the laws of physics themselves. It's too powerful for any one species to control." Dr. Lisa stepped forward. "With respect, Counselor, you're still thinking about this wrong. We don't control the seventh dimension. We learn to understand it, to communicate with it. There's a difference." Marcus moved to stand beside her. "The seventh dimension isn't a weapon or a tool. It's the foundation of reality itself. We simply learn to read and write in its language." The chamber erupted in urgent discussions. Some council members demanded immediate sharing of the technology. Others called for it to be banned as too dangerous. A few simply sat in stunned silence, their worldviews shattered. Silence. Head Counselor Red's voice boomed through the chamber. His crystalline form pulsed with intense light. "Humans, you must understand our concern. Your species went from being barely noticed to wielding power beyond our comprehension. How can we trust you with such ability?" Captain Robert smiled slightly. "The same way we trust ourselves. By understanding what this power really means, we didn't develop the seventh dimensional drive to become powerful. We developed it because we were curious about how reality works. And that," Admiral James added, "is the real difference between our approach and yours. You saw dimensions as tools to master. We saw them as mysteries to understand." Dr. Lisa stepped forward, activating a small holographic display. Above her palm, a perfect representation of the galaxy spun slowly. "The seventh dimension isn't about power," she explained. "It's about understanding. It's where the universe's consciousness resides, where reality itself thinks." The chamber fell silent again as her words sank in. The aliens began to understand that they weren't just witnessing a technological breakthrough. They were seeing a fundamental shift in how the universe could be understood. "So," Head Counselor Red asked, his voice quieter now, "what happens next?" Admiral James looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes and sensors of countless alien species. "That depends on you. We're offering to share our understanding, not as a weapon or a tool of power, but as a way to explore reality itself, to learn how the universe thinks, and maybe learn to think along with it." Marcus touched the simple badge on his uniform. "Your ships are bigger than ours. Your weapons are more powerful. Your technology is more advanced in many ways, but none of that matters in the seventh dimension. There, the only thing that matters is understanding." The chamber remained quiet, but the silence had changed. It wasn't the silence of fear or shock anymore. It was the silence of revelation, of a galaxy realizing that everything they thought they knew about reality was just the beginning. The age of laughter was over. The age of understanding had begun. And humanity, the species they had mocked just days ago, would lead the way into this new era, not through force or power, but through something far more important, the simple human desire to understand how things really work.